All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we have a sister on the platform, and you make sure to go to her YouTube channel, and hopefully I'm saying it right. Is it Shay Sade?
Yes, it is Shay Sade. You got it.
Now, when I seen your channel said Shay Sade, it made me think about In Living Color. Um,
Really?
there was a section, there was an episode on In Living Color where Homie the Clown, and he went to Shay Whitey.
Oh my
And
God.
he went in there to Shay Whitey. If anybody saw the episode, you know what I'm talking about. He went to Shay Whitey to meet the man. I don't know if you
Oh
saw
my
the episode.
gosh.
He ended up meeting the man at Shay Whitey. He had to end up bopping him on the head and all of that. So so that was made me think about that, in that time period. But
That's
other than
hilarious.
that, Sade, thank you for joining us over here on the Philip Scott Show.
Yo, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, so Sade, I looked at your channel and I was sent your video. Okay, so the reason why I had say, oh, I got to take that clip and make a video, is
Hmm.
because for me, and this I've said this before, people could date and marry who they want to date and marry, and that's
Hmm.
your business, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't have no issue with you want to do now. Some people have an issue with that, and my thing is get you some business. I think you should focus on what you got going on. The
Exactly.
only time for me it becomes an issue or a problem is when you're propagandizing.
Right. Right. That
And
part.
so the main reason I saw your video and I said, oh, she got an actual white woman in here telling the truth about her own men, is because it's full of propaganda, and it's so not only propaganda, but it's just so much bad faith arguments. It's you ain't been or nowhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
if you've been around people or traveled throughout the world, you realize people kind of the same minus a few things. But
Right.
that was the main reason why I had picked up the video. But I want to ask you the question: why did you interview? I didn't know the lady's name. What's the lady's name?
Her name Vicky. Her name is Vicky.
Vicky. Okay,
Uh-huh.
Vicky. All right.
Yeah.
So what made you want to interview Vicky?
Well, a couple of things. That's a really good question. So it just so happens, I have a really special relationship with Vicky. I've known her for like over 10 years. She's she's walked with me through very many different seasons. And so I just have a very eclectic group of friends in general. I always have. That's just who I am. And so when I started getting into the YouTube space, maybe about 10 months ago, I was very green, if you will, like what behind the ears. I guess I just came in not really knowing what to expect. And I kept on running across this content to me that just seemed like it was just outlandish. I don't know how else to put it. And I was hearing all these lies, especially coming from women who were sharing my complexion, honestly, about, you know, dating Brad, for lack of a better term, or marrying Brad. And I'm like, me actually being around white folks, I've been in white areas and communities. I have white friends. I've been to their houses, had conversations, had heart to heart. I knew a lot of the stuff I was hearing was just fairy tales, because I'm just like, if you actually talk to white people, then you will know that they're not going around, like walking around tulips and daisies. And many of them have struggles just like any other person. And I just would hear this stuff and I'm just like, where is this coming from? And then it clicked to me that I'm like, a lot of these women who are saying this stuff actually don't have a relationship with white people. And so I was like, instead of me trying to prove anything, why don't I just go to a source? Why don't I go to a white woman who was married to a white man, was raised by a white man, birthed a white man, and who can probably share more about her culture and her experience than anybody else? And so that was really what encouraged me to ask those questions. And I mean, that overall interview was just, it was talking, many different things about just, being a wife, housewife in general. We touched on different topics like hypergamy, actually what it means to be a stay-at-home mom, because I hear a lot of, garbage behind that. And so we touched upon a lot of different topics because, again, one of my goals on my channel is to actually interview people, talk to people who are in this space, winning, doing what they're doing, not talking about theory, not just talking about, what they dreamed up, but they've actually lived it. They've been there. They've, won, if you will. And then actually addressing the journey from point A to point B so that you can have a realistic understanding. So that's kind of what encouraged me to go down that route.
So what is wrong with you mentioned stay at home moms? Well, what
Uh-huh.
what is wrong with that? Because I'm curious to
Nothing,
hear that.
nothing is wrong with that. I hear this idea of sometimes I hear this idea of, like, how do I put it? Basically, women, yeah, some women being like, yeah, they want to be in a position where they don't have to work, right? I mean, classic Kevin Samuels, I'm sure you've heard of him, and how many women come in and talk about they don't want to have to work. They want to be able to stay at home and raise kids. And oftentimes I hear that coupled with this idea of resting in your femininity, and resting in your femininity also being coupled with luxury. Like I see these things oftentimes clumped together, and I think what is not oftentimes addressed is the fact that being a stay at home mom is very much a full time job. That is not unless you are like maybe the top 1% and you have nannies and personal chefs and, different house cleaners and people to do all those different chores. Being a stay at home mom, especially with kids, is still a full time job. And so I think it is a huge misunderstanding to kind of promote this hypergamy, level up, rest in your femininity lifestyle. I want to stay at home and act like that is completely devoid of work. And so that's what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with being stay at home. I think that is a beautiful job, but it is a job nonetheless. And so that's what I was saying. I wanted her to talk about that experience so that women could actually know, because you have women who grew up in single parent households who didn't even see a stay at home mom or didn't even see a functioning family being like, oh, I want to be a stay at home mom. And they don't even know what they're talking about. And so they're like coming up with these ideas, but like I said, they're not based upon anything other than maybe what they've seen on TV and a few ads.
Right, right. That's really always interesting to me, and also, the stay-at-home mom situation. You're right. It is a full-time job,
Mhm.
but I always say, because this is something that was practiced in the family and still is practiced in my
Yeah,
family now, is that I have a thing about I don't want my children in daycare.
of course.
And I
Yeah.
don't care if I have to get 2 jobs, 3 jobs. My wife, she had our little girl, and she was just starting to make, cakes at the time. My wife is I don't say she's a baker. I say she's a cake artist. And I can show you her stuff afterwards if you want to see it.
Awesome.
And I say, well, you know what? You could stay home and then you could start building your business at home, right? So this what my wife, ended up doing, right? She was at home with my little girl, and then she started building her business. So I always say that you can have a home based business if you like feel like you just have
O-
to do something
Of
outside of at
course.
least your home, with your child. But see, some of the problem that you have with even talking about staying at home moms is that you got guys, and which some guys, like I tell people, I think I come from a different universe, in my opinion. You watch the Marvel thing with the multiverse and all of that. You have guys talking about a 50-50 relationship.
Mm,
And, you're a married, woman, correct?
yes.
Okay. So, in my opinion, I'm not a 50% man, I'm 100% man. Meaning, I need to be able to pay all the bills, period. I don't supposed to lean on and depend on my wife to pay half of the bills or we go under.
Right. Right.
So how can you say 50-50, but you still want everything else to go along with a man that is 100 on everything? You see that issue coming up a lot in the conversation?
Yeah. That's a good point, and I think that is a point of contention. Well, and I'll say this because I've always wondered if this kind of 50-50 position and response is men's response to feminism, right? Women saying, "Hey, we want to be more modern. We want to go into the workforce. We want to basically compete." Right. And so I've always wondered, like, okay, is it a response to that? Is it a response to, things like the Me Too movement, different things where men have felt like, okay, we're kind of shackled here, or the different things that we used to be able to do freely, now we can't. And therefore we have to try to respect this new boundary. And so, I've heard it come up a lot. I can say, especially from the female space, I oftentimes feel like I see this contradiction, right? Women who want to be modern and women who want to be respected as modern and treated as such, except when it comes to certain things like chivalry, obviously bills, still wanting to be, treated like a feminine woman and taken out and paid for, yet still wanting the benefits of a modern, you know, construct. And so try to think about that from the guy's point of view. So it's like, okay, this woman wants to be modern and traditional, but still requires you to be traditional. And so that's what I don't know. Like I can't say I have the answer, but I think about that. I'm like, where did that even come from? And who started it? I can't
Well,
say I know the answer.
I mean, yeah, you could bring that point about the feminism aspect, but
Uh-huh.
what I teach guys is if you see any hint of feminism from a woman, then you walk away,
Uh-huh.
because feminism, a lot of that starts going into masculinity,
Mm-hmm.
and you have some women that's so masculine, it'll make a guy start thinking, wait a minute, I'm not no LGBT. I'm literally dating a man.
Fair,
You
fair.
understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So some dudes could be on that. Well, shoot, she want to be a man. Well, she need to pay half these bills. But
Right.
see, where I come from with the situation is that for me, that's not masculinity to me. Like for me, you don't be underneath the skirt of no woman
No,
as a man.
yeah, no, I
If all I can afford is this underneath my bills, that's how we gonna live until we get to the other point. Well, I can pay this. Say no, you can't pay nothing. Let me tell you why you can't pay nothing. Because you may get pregnant. What if you get pregnant and the doctor say it's difficult pregnancy, you need bed rest? What I'm gonna do with half of these bills that I couldn't pay because I'm looking at you to pay 50-50? Am I gonna make you lose our baby because of that? Sometimes women just get in that mode sometimes that women get into, and they just don't really feel like doing nothing much anymore, or they want to switch careers, or I've seen women do so many different things, right? And then if you force her to keep doing something, she's going to resent you. Then that's going to start problems in the relationship because she's resenting you because you're forcing her. Then she's going to talk to her
oh my
friends,
gosh.
right?
You ain't telling no lie.
She gonna talk to her friends. I had a doorbell ring. She gonna talk to her friends, and then it's gonna be, yeah, he forced me to work this job. I can't stand this job. And why don't he just why don't he just be a man and do it himself? Why you this that? You know what I'm saying? So it's gonna start a problem because no matter what this messed up society says, right? That's why I love going to other countries, and I
Mm.
definitely love how the society is in a lot of places in Africa,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Uh-huh.
Where you still have the gender roles.
Yeah.
In America, because of this feminism and all this other stuff, you did kind of blended the two.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
now you have more guys, unfortunately, acting feminine because they were raised with single mothers.
Right. And I think, to your point, you got I think about that. Those guys who are quick to maybe accept a new modern way of doing things or to even enforce that, right? I wonder, like, okay, have they been raised by mothers? Have they been raised by mothers only and not necessarily had men to come alongside? Because obviously it takes a man to raise a man. I mean, it's just nobody can convince me otherwise. Not to say, women obviously have a part, but I mean, you have to learn manhood from another man. Like that, it just is what it is. So, there's a lot of guys up here who are guessing, and women too. Like I said, I think it's on both sides. So, um, I certainly agree that I think so much of the changing gender norms has created a lot of complications in relationships. Many people find themselves confused. Many people find themselves in spaces where it's like they're doing something, but it just doesn't feel right. Um, and yeah, I mean, everything you described about how that can impact a relationship, I'm laughing because I'm like, that is so spot on. And women, I'm a woman. I know we can be emotional, incredibly emotional, right? Happy one day, then the next day sad, and then the next day in between. And it's like if you have to try to run any business or anything, depending upon that income, good luck. Not to say you can't do it, but good luck.
Right. And even if you want your wife, let's say, like I did, say, look, start your own business. As a man, you gotta have money to even invest into your wife, right? So you want her to do a business at the house. Well, you may have to invest into classes, may have to invest in the school, may have to invest into equipment, or whatever the case may be. You gotta be a man enough to have the money to even invest into her so they could build that, right? Or even
Right.
invest into
That's true.
yourself as a man.
Right.
And what a lot of guys don't understand is that you are it's that no matter what woman you with, women respect masculine men that walk in their masculinity. They walk as a provider, they
Uh-huh.
walk as a protector, they walk as a leader. Women, no matter where they come from, gonna respect that.
You know what else is actually interesting that you said, um, and this is where I think many women might be ruled out because you said you were like, okay, if this is what I'm making right now, this is what I can afford. This is what we're living under. These are the conditions we're living under, and I know there's women out there who they wouldn't accept that. They're saying, okay, well, if you're only making this amount of money, I can make the same amount of money. I'd rather work and have be able to go on vacations and do stuff like that versus just be on one income and then have a struggle of situation until you get better. Like I know there's women out there who would not agree with that. So you'd have to even be with a woman who'll be willing to ride with you and build with you in those different stages. And not
Yeah, but
all women are there.
thank God, I thank God I found that, right? Because
Right, right,
me and my
right.
wife be married next week 10 years.
Oh, that's
But
awesome. That's awesome.
this the thing. Why black folks act like we have never struggled before? Struggle don't last always. It don't. Now, when we first got together, yes, I already had my career in the petrochemical industry, but
Uh-huh.
I wasn't rich at it, right?
Yeah.
I'm still building my time up, in that industry. And while at that moment, she had a job, and I always said your woman's job is like extra, like use that to save money for the down payment of the house, right? Or you could add that income when you're trying to get some sort of like mortgage or some sort of car, big credit, but
Uh-huh.
you don't want to have it where you dependent on her, right? So what
I
is wrong
understand.
with struggling? You hear people say struggle love, struggle this, struggle that. Like most Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly.
So Charlotte, I need to ask you, where in the hell has this come from? And I've seen a lot of females in our community that act like they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. And we grew up in the hood.
Right.
Well, what is it like? Like I did a video the other day. Well, a woman said to a guy, like, you took me to some old cheap $100 meal. Like, where's this entitlement come from?
I, you know, I it is a phenomenon to me as a black woman, quite honestly. And I will say this, even as a black woman, I know that I've had experiences. I've lived in really beautiful neighborhoods, been in nice places. So I've had experiences that are, maybe your average black woman in America hasn't had. And even some of these ideas I see flowing around, I'm just like, where is this stuff coming from? My grandma was a sharecropper. Had family members fleeing from the South because of different stuff. Like, to your point, struggle has always been a part of the Black American identity. And like you said earlier, your average American right now, period, is struggling. It doesn't matter what ethnicity. And so it other than it being based upon fairy tales, maybe Disney, because it's certainly not coming from reality. These women aren't getting these ideas from what they're seeing. Sometimes I wonder if it's just like escapism, if it's them hoping for something different, seeing different things they see online, seeing different movies, televisions, and then the mixture of those things happening over and over again, social media, and they take that and they hold on to it as a dream to try to escape their present reality. I don't know, Miss Anne syndrome. Like I can't say I figured it out, but it is, I know it's perpetuated in media, and I've done many of videos myself dedicated to just that, to kind of bursting the myth that black women are leveling up and doing so well and deserve luxury. Actually, a video I just dropped today was talking about why I don't think black women deserve luxury. Though they can work for it, or they can earn it, or get it from their husbands or whatever, but you don't just deserve it by nature of who you are, because that's not reality. So
Well, you are in a different space. I'm glad you mentioned husbands because you are a married woman.
uh-huh.
And so since you're being a married woman, I want to go two places. But let me go back to what you just talked about. How long you and your husband been married?
Oh, I'm newly. We're like 6 months.
Y'all been married 6 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
All right. So what most and you are in a state that you really need a lot of money to be in.
No,
So
for real. That's
yes, yes.
a
So
lot, a
so
lot of money.
yeah, because I went to last time I went to LA back in August, and I met with one of our contributors there, and she had told me that you need at least $200,000 a year to live in LA. And when I
Comfortably, yeah.
kind of saw what was going on over there, I was like, shoot, that would be minimum wage.
No, no, literally, out here, and it's probably gone up. But I know four people on $100,000. You're at the poverty level out here. I'm in the Bay
Hmm.
Area. I mean, because a starter home in the Bay Area is about $1.5 million. That's a starter home. So I have many of friends who work in the Silicon Valley. You're talking the Googles of the world, the Facebooks, right?
Hmm.
The Twitters, the LinkedIn's. Like they're working at these big corporations, having to move back home with their parents because if they're married or they have kids or whatever, it's like they can't save up enough to actually be able to own property or do these things because just the prices are just so ridiculously high right now. So it's real
Right.
out here, definitely.
It's definitely real.
Uh-huh.
So it's safe to say that since you've been married with your husband, have you had any kind of struggles here and there at times financially?
Of course, I mean that's a part of life. Like
Well,
that's a part of
see,
life.
okay, Sade, what you just said, I've experienced it too. I've
Yeah.
definitely experienced it. They come in and say they don't want any kind of struggle love, but you are a married woman and you're saying freshly married, and
Mhm.
you're saying that we have already experienced it.
Yeah, I mean who in the pandemic, unless you are a billionaire, right? Everybody has felt it on some level. I'm not saying I'm like living in the car, you know, thank
Hmm.
God, like, we always had a place to stay, always enough food on the table, like not late anything, I always had everything just enough, but it's not like, okay, um saying I'm not Jeff Bezos that made all these
Right.
billions of dollars, whatever. So I'm like,
Right.
that's kind of that's kind of what happened to everybody who was in the pandemic, right? Like unless I'm
Right.
missing something, no one was exempt from that. So
So it's safe to say that no matter who you are, if you have a loving relationship, you're gonna deal with some struggle.
of course, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Because it's ups and downs. So what makes you a little different than a lot of these women that's talking online is that them pictures behind you, you have a husband.
Yeah.
So a lot of them talking is speaking from a position that they're by themselves, angry,
It's theory,
whatever the case may be, right? We
right?
don't know their situation. Why did your husband marry you? Did he tell you why he married you?
Gosh, um, that's a good question. I mean, well, I know he loves me, obviously. I think he said he just saw something different in me.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly I'm not perfect. He knows that more than anyone. God knows I have my struggles, but yeah, I think he just said he saw something different and was willing to work with him. And
Right.
guys are pretty simple. They don't ask for much.
We really
So I
don't.
think, well, the real men, they don't ask for much. So it's like you kind of hitting the simple stuff. It's like, okay, well, let's just move on already with our lives and get married. So
Right.
or build and so
So you were different. You stood out to everybody else to him.
yeah.
Okay. So based off of the way you're talking and the way you present yourself to me, it seems like you're easygoing.
I try to be. I don't think
Oh,
I'm
I'm not saying that you don't get upset at times or whatever, but
yeah,
the
definitely.
overall personality seem like you're an easygoing person.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So he probably saw that.
mhm.
You probably a person that didn't have all the mouth and attitude.
No, 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 no. That's not really my thing. And no, I will
Hmm.
say, I'll be honest, sometimes I can be a little passive aggressive, and he's had to correct me on that. But
Okay.
but I'll listen and I'll be like, okay, I didn't even know. I didn't even know I was being like because that's the thing too. But yeah, I'm not I grew up with a dad in my life, right? And my dad is a very, very much
Ah,
yeah.
now we getting somewhere. You grew up with your father.
Yeah, and my dad is a very type A personality, and so I've known certain kind of personalities. You can't just go at them forward. You kind of have to approach it a certain way. So, like I've always been one of those kind of people that can pretty much get along well with most people. And there's an up and a downside to that, but like I said, I think that probably helped me to a certain capacity. So,
Yeah. Now, this is what I have seen. Just what I have seen.
uh huh,
Women that come from two-parent households usually are more successful in marriage than women that come from single-parent households,
that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
because you got to see both sides. Especially you come from a loving, your home was a loving home. Nobody perfect, who is?
Right.
But you come from a loving home. Your dad respected your mom respected your dad. You know what I'm saying? They you had got the best of both worlds. So when you moved on into your relationship, right, you carried some of that into your relationship, because remember, your husband said that you were different. You wouldn't like all these modern females out here. So this is why, and this same thing, like when I met my wife, I said the same thing. She's different. She ain't like the rest of them. And
Mm.
I don't know if I can really just say let this one go.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't, I don't think I can do that. And men know, like we know when we find something that's different, we don't want to just let it go too much.
exactly. And it's funny because I tell a lot of I have a lot of single friends now who I'll talk to, and they'll have these different dating experiences, and I'm like, look, guys know pretty early on. So if you're 3, 4, 5 months into a relationship and y'all don't know the status, he's not looking at you as wife material. You just need to move him at that point. Because like at a certain time, it's just like, oh yeah, she's just a side chick. And I think some females out there don't even really know the difference when they're just being played or used as a side chick versus he's like, no, like I want to keep you long term. So
Exactly, like my situation, right? So when I met, me and my wife met online,
okay.
and we got to talking. Um, it was actually long distance for a little bit, not long distance, but we live in the same state though. I ended up meeting up with her in January of 2011. We was going back and forth between Houston and McAllen, Texas, where she was at the time. And think we hit it all so good that I even asked my friends about it. They were the same thing, like your husband. Hey man, she
Mhm.
different. She doing this. 'Cause the first time I met my wife, she cooked a whole meal. She did all kind
Yeah.
of things. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
shoot, because
That's
most of these little women you meet, they want you to take them somewhere. She's like, nah, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna make some food. Because look, most men, if a woman could cook a good meal, you gonna get his attention real quick, especially today, because a lot of these little women can't cook to save their life.
I did not know how much of a thing that was until I started talking to different dudes. And
Yeah.
and they told me because I was a young girl who asked for easy bake oven as a little girl. So I've always
Hmm.
loved cooking and I've always loved experimenting in the kitchen. I don't like dishes as much, but I think food is fun. And so I think it's a joy to be able to cook and do different things for my husband and to try different recipes. And so I guess when I started talking to these different men and they would tell me about the horror stories that they would have, I'm like, really? Like just basic stuff? And I mean, I don't pretend to be, an expert by any means, but I'm like, is it really that bad out there?
For what a lot of men say it is, because that's the thing. As men, okay, if this woman's gonna be your wife, right?
Uh-huh.
Do you want your children being fed freaking Burger King or McDonald's all the time?
No, of course not. That's a horrible idea.
That's what I'm saying. So you think about it, when the lockdowns happened, you had so many of these little women, these little modern women. How do you cook this? How do you cook that? Because they were so dependent on the restaurant to do everything for you and keep you broke, right?
I
So
Yeah,
y-
I don't.
you know, and also the old people said this: "Oh, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach." The
Of
old people
course.
said that.
I mean, I remember my grandmama teaching me a few things as a kid, and then my mom, but like I said, a lot of that stuff was just me. I just happened to like cooking, and then I'm thinking also, I mean, when you move on your own,
Hmm.
it's certainly, I think, it's healthier. It can be affordable depending on what you're getting. Obviously, if you do it that way. So I never saw that as like a rarity. I thought that's just kind of what you did until I started talking to different men who were saying how they find it so difficult to find women that have just basic cooking skills.
Yeah,
So,
and also, I bet that when the first time he went to your place, it was clean, right?
oh, absolutely.
Okay, because listen, I've seen it with my own two eyes. You have women that will invite a man to their house, and you need a pathway to walk. And you see these little women, they all made up and everything, but their house look a mess.
I
Dishes,
will
places.
okay, I will say there's been maybe a time or so where I've seen women on Instagram like taking selfies and
Uh
they
huh.
look good and you see in the back like piles of laundry and trash and all this stuff and I'm like, why are you taking pictures with all that garbage in the background? Like I'm confused.
Right. So once again, this is why your husband said you were different because maybe he even seen that too. You understand? So when a man,
Interesting.
especially in this day and time, tell you different, oh, you different. That's the
But
truth. Now, I also read something on, I was just going through your channel, and you
uh-huh.
said something very interesting, and I think this is very important because, they talk about leveling up and all that stuff that women talk about.
Uh,
You had said, and quote me if I'm wrong, that when you was about the age of 11, that you was 170 pounds.
yes. Yeah.
Okay, could you explain? Like you mentioned that you got over binge eating.
Yeah, so I was yeah, yes, definitely. So I was an overweight kid, definitely. My family in general struggled with their weight. Different people even to this day have different, challenges with that. And I think some of it was a mixture of miseducation, um, stress. I mean, like you said it before, just to be in America, especially to be a black person in America is this, comes with struggle. And so I think for me, growing up there, just different things I was learning to try to process emotionally. Like, for example, being in a kid, and I'm the only black kid there. I'm the tallest one there. I don't look like everybody else. Everybody else is sticks. I got thick thighs, stuff like that. And so, going through those different seasons, and not necessarily at the time, maybe having the education that we now have about food, healthiness, different stuff like that. And I'll resort to food sometimes, like for my emotions. And then it just got to the point where I just I started putting on weight. And so, yeah. So like I said, that happened. And then I think what got me into the kind of like the diet binge cycle was because I started dieting so young. I started to see some results, but I dieted really all the way up until like high school. And the downside about dieting, especially if you go like on a strict one sometimes, that's not realistic, is that your body kind of has this like response where it literally is like, I need food, I need calories, stuff like that. And so I would have these times where I'd be on these super, super restrictive diets. And then something may happen. Maybe I'd get upset at school, someone teased me, or I was just hungry, whatever. And then I would just like binge. And so it was just kind of like this, it was like this weird cycle that I had really up until I think up until like my late teens or whatever. And then I started to figure out like, okay, some of this is probably emotional. I need to kind of unpack this a little bit. So
So what do you do? So what do you do now to keep your weight the way it is? You do like keto, you do like exercise, what do you do?
well, good question. I mean, like I said, because I started dieting so young, I think I really adapted pretty good eating habits. So there's just certain things like I'm just not one to be like, oh man, I'm so hungry short on time. I'm gonna go to McDonald's. Like I just wouldn't do that. Like I would sooner go to, I don't know, Rayleigh's or Whole Foods or somewhere, try to grab some pre-made chicken or or something where it's like, okay, this isn't the best, but it has some nutritional value. Like I'm not one to just go to a fast food like if I'm short on food. So I think there's just like basic good um healthy eating that I've adopted because I've been doing it for so long. I try to go to the farmers market every week and get produce. Now, luckily, I'm in an environment where I can do so. I understand that everybody has access to a farmers market and fresh organic produce, but that's stuff that I do. I work out, 4 or 5 times a week. Sometimes more aggressive than others, but at least try to do some weight training, some cardio, stuff like that. So for me, it's an overall lifestyle because I do know that when I eat better or do certain things like that, I tend to feel better versus like if I'm already emotionally struggling in some way or just having a female moment, however you want to call it, and then I add to that some McDonald's and then I had some processed food, that stuff weighs on your body and your psychology even more. So, yeah.
Yes, I definitely, processed food is one of the most horrible things. And also, stress. Boy, the most stress you have sometimes, that stress, that's a major thing for a lot of us. And with like you said, struggling with especially the high fructose corn syrup. That's something that boy, that's the devil. Like I look at pork, that's the devil.
The devil, right?
Yeah, pork is the devil to me. But I saw on your channel also, you was called Shahrazad Ali, and also I think they was referring to you as a Pick Meisha. Is that correct?
A Pick Meisha.
Pick Meisha. Okay. So why are they calling you that?
So Mammy, Pick Meisha, black male worshiper, male identified. I think those are the most consistent. And Dusty. Those are the most consistent.
You're Dusty.
Evidently so.
Oh wow. Okay.
Which it's funny because I'm like, my channel almost never talks about dusty men. Many of these channels are hyper focused on dusty men, and I'm like, if you're focused on dusty men and you're around them all the time, then what is that saying about you? But anyways, so to me, it's kind of funny. But the most interesting thing that I found is that anytime I'm called Mammy, which is probably the most consistent insult I get, it's usually in reference to the fact of me addressing different things that have happened in the Black community and positive things that Black men have actually done in the Black community. Mm-hmm. I don't pretend that there isn't trauma on both sides. There aren't horrible things that Black men have done, that there aren't horrible things that Black women have done. We obviously know that exists. We obviously know there's a lot of different things to this day in the Black community that needs to be addressed. I don't really, though, like the propaganda, and I don't really support any ideology that would eventually lead to the genocide of me and you or people who share a complexion. Mm-hmm. So anytime I address those kinds of claims, that's usually when the Mammy and the Pick Meisha stuff comes.
Well, this is the thing. Most of those women that's calling you Pick Meisha, Mammy,
right?
They don't have a husband. So obviously, yes, you were picked.
Right. And that's the thing about it. All women are pick-me's. Because all women want to be picked. All women want to be picked. And they are certainly, some of these women out there are certainly the most thirstiest pick-me's for Brad. The issue is some of these pick-me's end up being picked by the wrong dude. And then they get ran over a few times. And then their heart's broken and they become bitter. And instead of maybe being reflective and saying, I was picked by the wrong guy, I allowed myself to be picked by the wrong guy, I am partially responsible for that, they blame it on Black men. And I'm like, no, that's not the fault of Black men. That's the fault of the man that you chose. And I'm saying there needs to be a distinguishment. So I think, like I said, those women who complain about pick-me's were a pick-me at one point in time and it blew up in their face. And that's usually why they're upset.
Well, at the same time, these women are talking about Dusty all the time. This guy Dusty, that guy Dusty. I'm like, but all they can attract is Dusty.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, who are you around? Because I don't feel like I am surrounded by Dusties. That is not my experience. I know it's out there, and I have, certainly seen and been in interaction with people like that. But I sound like, oh my gosh, the dust. And I'm like, and you do know if you're in a dusty situation, dust is by default going to go on you. So I'm like, again, what are you saying about yourself? That's what I'm saying. I don't think we fully understand what we're doing when we kind of push some of these narratives. Because like we end up being implicated sometimes.
Well, it's like that statement. Mm-hmm. You attract who you are.
Exactly.
So if they always talking about these men are dusty, because you dusty. Like you look into those women lives, they are dusty as hell. Right?
Well, that's
like me, for instance. I have never dated or fooled no hood rats. I've never did it because those women don't like me and I don't like them. So I've never had that experience.
Right.
All the women I've ever dealt with had jobs, they wasn't criminals. They didn't have tattoos on their neck and all these tattoos on the breast and you know what I'm saying? Drinking bottles of Hennessy to the head and all that. I've never dealt with that.
Fair. Yeah. And I mean, to me, it's like no shade to whoever you were attracted to, but then we also have to take responsibility. I said this in plenty of my videos. It's like, there's been moments in my life where I've had to take responsibility. I had to take responsibility for my weight. I have to take responsibility for times when it's like, okay, man, I feel like I'm having some emotional struggles right now. What do I need to do? I had to take responsibilities for bad relationships I had in the past. It's like I am not exempt from my own choices.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's consequences related to that. So, but somehow, somewhere, like I think some of us women feel like we don't need to be held accountable or we don't need to be responsible for our own decisions. That's not really healthy.
Right. Well, this is what I say about that. I hear that term a lot. Held accountable. Held accountable. Only people that can really hold you accountable is really yourself, and your life is going to hold you accountable. Because
Right.
you can come on here and do all this running off of the mouth online all day long, getting you some AdSense checks, right? You can do that, but in your personal life, some of the ones on here that got the biggest mouths, it's the most lonely, it's the most sad. You know what I'm saying? And the bad part about it, they're encouraging. That's the bad part. Encouraging younger women to follow down that same path of destruction.
You know what's crazy? My husband actually this morning he sent me this post on Twitter. I need to go back and look at it a little more, but it was basically a woman. I don't know if she's an influencer, but she was basically saying like, this is why we continue to promote divesting. This is why we can continue to talk about Black men this way, because we're trying to recruit young girls. Our goal is to get to the young generation. Divesting is not for older women, it's for the younger generation. We're trying to awaken them to what's really going on. So it was like, this woman is saying, no, we're trying to get this next generation. We're trying to make them like us. And I'm like, what sickness is that? Because you mentioned this before, where it's like, date whoever you want to date, marry whoever you want to marry. That's a personal choice, and there's nothing wrong with that. But why would there be such a push for something that is promoting self-hatred? And I guess I was so surprised when I saw that this morning and see someone actively proclaim like, yeah, our goal is to get the younger innocent generations and to infect them with this poison. Quite literally, I don't know how else to put it.
Well, Sister Sade, let me tell you something. Nobody gonna tell you this too much, and maybe you've heard this, but I'm gonna go down that path with you. The divestors outside of their propaganda is the most failed group of women ever. Let me tell you why they're a failed group of women. Brad, at the end of the day, wants somebody and his offspring to look like him.
Right.
That divestment Black woman could never give him a white son. He probably want a Kyle Rittenhouse, because a lot of them, they got their racism. They want to have their little white girl. They could never give him that.
Yeah.
Only
Absolutely.
the white woman could give them the white child. That is it. Only thing you could do is give them a Black child. That's the only thing you can do. That's why when these white men date them, they whore them out. They do the worst of the worst to them.
Yeah, that's
okay.
fact.
They have to endure being called the N-word. Listen, I've had Black women telling me this. They have been married to Brad and they have been called N-words I don't know how many times. Or they want those Black women to hate Black men so much because they're so insecure about maybe she'll cheat on me with a Black man. And a lot of times that do be happening.
It does.
Brad.
No, it really does.
Yeah, she got her Brad, but she's sneaking over here with Tyrone, getting her back blown out somewhere.
That's
okay.
fact.
Because she really loves Black men. And then the third thing about those divestment females, a lot of them, when I say they're failures, they're angry because notice they got their Brad, right? But then they're mad at Young Jeezy for being with Jenny Mai. I thought you wanted Brad. Why are you mad at him?
That's
No,
what
you're
I'm
mad at him
saying.
because you wanted a man like Young Jeezy and you couldn't get it. So you settled with Brad. That's why you're mad.
Right. And I'm like, if you're really content in your relationship, then you're not really looking for something else. You're like, well, I'm happy with what I have.
Exactly.
So, and I was actually telling my husband this last night. It's like these women, a lot of them are lying because it's like no woman is going to spend countless hours bashing men that they're not attracted to. If they find a man physically unattractive and unappealing, they're not going to waste their energy talking about that man. So the fact that it's like every single video, every conversation, it's like that's because you're attracted to these men. And you're just upset that maybe you didn't get the ones that you want. And I did a review of Cynthia G maybe like a few weeks ago, where I was recently introduced to her channel, and I've kind of done that before, where I look at a few different content channels and I'll like review them, partially as like market research for me since I'm still newer to this space, and also because I want to understand like what are women listening to, where are they going, like where are they congregating, and so I came across her channel and I wanted to do a review on it and just get my honest feedback on like, hey, here's what I saw, here are the different points she made, and here's my points on it, and so like I said, that is kind of what I think what instigated a lot of the different Mammy and Pick Me comments, just simply because I was looking at the claims. I was like, okay, this is her claim. Does this add up? Why or why not? That's all. I try to keep really respectful. Like, wasn't calling her out of her name. That's not really my thing. Wasn't being like, oh, well, she's this and that. Like, she's her own person. Just reviewing the content, just reviewing the claims. And like I said, that made, I guess, a lot of people mad. But, is what it is.
Well, like I remember in the beginning, and I told you that I'm a seasoned vet in this.
Yeah.
So that means I have a long history, and my mind is very, very, very long on a whole lot of people.
Okay.
And when you mention Cynthia, and if you want to see the interviews I've done personally with Cynthia in the past,
Okay.
I can see the link. Cynthia of today is not the Cynthia that I first came in contact with. Cynthia of the past was hardcore going at white racists. Okay. Cynthia had them white supremacists pissed. Cynthia was on, just like she doing right now, talking about the brothers deal. That's how she was against white men. She was calling them evil albinoid devils. She was calling them all kind of names, and they were pissed off with Cynthia. You know what I'm saying? And that's how she even got on my radar. Remember I told you my news section and kind of how my news section works.
Okay.
So that's how she got on my radar. Every brother that's kind of in that space was really fooling with Cynthia a lot, including myself.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So Cynthia was like, she was on it. She would be debating these white supremacists and all of that.
Dang,
right?
that's crazy. That's crazy.
I remember that she was getting these white supremacists so hard that on the white supremacist website Daily Stormer, Andrew Anglin, that main white supremacist right there, they had conspired to attack Cynthia, like try to take down her Patreon and her YouTube channel, because she had some other YouTube channels, and they did that. Matter of fact, when it was about to come at her, I hollered at her. I say, Cynthia, they about to cut these. Look at this link. These white boys trying to attack you, right? So they were constantly attacking her, taking down her page, because they were so in their feelings that Cynthia was just like put a bad taste in their mouth a lot, right? And I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened with her. I can't even answer that. I haven't spoke to her in years, right?
Okay.
But she came out later down the line with this new content. So I will publicly say it's kind of disappointing what I see with her, because I know she's so much smarter than that, and she's so much more witty than what she's doing now. I personally think it's beneath her what she's doing, because I know the Cynthia of the past. That's why I can go off of. The person today, I don't know. I can't speak on that.
Interesting.
But that's the true history of Cynthia, for me. So when I hear her do that at times, I say, well, maybe one day that the Cynthia that I knew in the past will come back. So
yeah,
that's that. So yeah, that's why I don't really address that what she's kind of doing today, because I knew who she were back then.
That's good. And like I said, I always try to, especially I've never spoken with her before, so I certainly can't make and would never try to make any claims about her character, because I don't know. We've never had a conversation. I just, looking at the content for what it is, from what I've seen, it's like, okay, well, this is what you're saying. Let's try to dig deep in the fact. Let's see if this is right or not. So, I try to keep it at that level. And yeah, there are certainly things that I saw where I'm like, yeah, I think this is damaging, and here's why. But I always encourage people to always try to, think for themselves and not just take my word for it or her word for it. But at the end of the day, go and do your own research.
Because just be honest with you, Dusty, you will have with you always, no matter what community you come from. So sure, you could talk about dustiness all day. I think if you talk about it in a funny sense, I think it's funny and cool. But when you get to a real serious thing and you kind of, it's levels to it. Like me, sure, if I went on my news channel and every day I was talking about the hood rats in a very, very serious tone, not really joking about them or whatever, then because I understand that the hood rats isn't the majority in the black community,
Yeah.
right? They're not. But I don't know. Like I said, I just don't want to put my attention on hood rats unless it's a joke, right? That's
Yeah,
why I'm going with
that's
it.
facts.
But
Facts.
like I said, I can send you some links after this. So some interviews I've done with her, and you will
Yeah.
see night and day.
Yeah, totally.
Night and day what you're seeing in the videos versus what you and your. I think you would think like, wow, that's night and day. So,
I
but
said,
go ahead.
I'd had an interview with actually a Jessica X early this week. And
I actually caught that.
oh, okay, great, yeah. And I was saying how, like, I mean, I would love to have a sit down conversation with some of these divestors and hash some things out. And I'm like, hey, maybe we may walk away and learn some things. Now, I don't know if any of them would be willing to do that. And I think it would probably need to be in a neutral platform, because I know some platforms they don't really allow for open and honest discussion without name calling and insulting. And I wouldn't want to do that. But in an ideal scenario, adults could get together and to talk about different things, hash out different topics, and maybe learn a little something. But to your point, I think people out there are they're so bitter, and it's such an emotional trigger for them that you're incapable of having a honest, logical conversation about it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. With that being said, Miss Sade, let people know how can they get to your channel. We want them to subscribe and check out your content.
Yeah.
With all calling you Mammy and Pick Meisha. We want them to see the Pick Meisha content.
The Pick Meisha content. I actually have a video called "I Love Being a Pick Me and You Should Too." It wasn't a troll video, but low-key was a troll video.
Troll videos are the best.
But yeah, because like I said, most women, all women are pick me's. It is what it is. But yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Shay Sade. I'd love to have you guys stop by, check out my content. I also post pretty regularly on my community tab, polls, different questions, things like that. So you can find me on YouTube and also on Instagram. I do plan on expanding to more platforms, hopefully sometime next year. But for right now, that's where you can reach me. So check me out.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you go subscribe to our sister Shay Sade on her channel. We'll make sure to put the @ in the title. That way you can just click it and go to her page, and it'd be easy for y'all to subscribe. We also put a pinned comment at the bottom as well, so you can go subscribe and join the conversation over there. So Miss Sade, thank you very much for coming over today to our channel and having this great conversation. It was a good build.
It was awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.